Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast of Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who may or may not be on the Hendon Hooker hype train. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing good. Love this time of year. Love the NFL draft coming up. We are just a few weeks away. Lots to talk about, and we're going to get into all of it. It's fun stuff.
Yeah, Kyle, I'm pumped up for this. This is always a great time. I think that there's always a lot of stuff to argue about, which is fun. Listen, you get to the dog days of the off season. Sometimes there's certain podcasts you're, not enjoying, but not necessarily getting super amped up in the morning to do. This one, I'm amped for it. This is fun.
Yeah, there's not a ton of prep work with some of our past couple weeks podcasts. This one, this is a lot of work to put into the draft stuff. And like I said, I am on board with saying I don't take my draft opinions that seriously, but I still try and put some of the work in and try and have the best educated guesses I can have.
Yeah, and I feel like the only time you can talk about draft stuff should be during the draft. I think years removed, everything becomes a lot more obvious because you know how good the players end up being. But plenty of these prospects we're going to have in specific spots for valid reasons. They're going to end up not deserving where we ended up putting them, but it was still the correct place to put them given what we know about them now.
Yeah. So where would you rank Kellen Mond amongst this crop of quarterbacks?
Oh, he'd be one. Still one. Absolutely. Listen, if you're here for the perfect takes that are never wrong, you've come to the wrong place.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that podcast exists, so good luck finding that.
Yeah, if you find it, let me know because I'm tired of getting it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll just start plugging their podcast in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll show up, we'll play their podcast for an hour, and then we'll leave.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, this is fun time. I enjoy talking about a lot of these guys. I've watched a lot of these guys for years. It's great breaking them down, great talking about some of their stories, and it's it's definitely a time where I let a little more loose and just kind of throw out some wild opinions because you can get away with it.
Sure, why not? It's all about fun at the end of the day, but these are still going to be our honest and true opinions. Next week, we're going to do the defensive side of the ball, every defensive position, giving our rankings there. The following week, we'll do offense, and then finally, we're going to do our mock draft it'll be the Wednesday before the draft, so the day before the draft. We see someone in the chat saying, let's start taking bets. Who's Jackson's Zach Wilson this year? Also, wild username by that commenter. But yes, who will be my Zach Wilson? There might be a Zach Wilson, I got to say. But, I think some mild takes, some relatively hot takes. Not scorching hot, but I don't know. Maybe like a hot pocket where it's like could burn your mouth if you bite into the wrong spot. That kind of take.
Yeah. That's a fair point. So I guess, quickly before we get into these rankings and talk about these guys, where are you at now with this quarterback class that you've gotten a chance to see all of them? Because you are very notably not a college guy. You're not a college football fan. You pretty much consume this from January to this point to start doing your draft detailing. So I think last year, everyone kind of universally agreed was not a great quarterback class, and it still kind of showed on the field that it wasn't a great quarterback class. The year before, there was 5 guys we were talking about as potential top 3 picks. Where are you at with this class?
Yeah, I think it's definitely in between those two classes. That kind of goes without saying. I think that I like this quarterback class. I think there's a couple of players that I'm okay with spending, a top 10 pick on. There's a few players, more than just 2, that I'm okay with that. I don't love the depth of this class because this, you said you touched on it, but I don't watch any college football other than the big games. Pretty much all I do is I watch these guys tape like it's, I don't know, I'm binge watching a Netflix show. That's how I get this stuff, which I think creates a unique evaluation experience. But I would say if I had to give this class like a grade, maybe like a C. I think it's like an average quarterback class for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I will say after about 5, I feel like you're drafting backup quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
There's one guy after 5 in my rankings that I'm like, okay, if everything works out, I think he could be pretty good. But I also think he has the lowest floor of anybody in this draft too. We'll get into that one. And then, I think the top 5 have potential to be good, but I don't know if I'm banking on any of these guys becoming stars. Like, I don't think there's a Trevor Lawrence that I'm willing to throw my hat behind as this is the future star of the league.
Yeah, I think I agree, but I will say that I think there are a couple of players that I still really do like at the top of this draft. A couple of players I have on my list, Kyle, that I'm not sure if I would draft. Just throwing that out there. I think that there's, I think I have 8 players who I have a yes, draft this player for sure at some point during the draft. My 10 and 9, I'm not as high on. I had to pick 10. So do you want to start there and maybe, we won't spend forever on the back of the list, but want to start off with number 10?
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
All right. So number 10, I am going quarterback out of Purdue, Aidan O'Connell, who again, there's things to like about O'Connell, I think. There's definitely things that worry me. I don't think he has a huge arm. I do think he's a pure pocket passer. There will be a good amount of air under a lot of his throws, and he was number 1, according to PFF, on turnover-worthy plays. So that's concerning. But I don't know. I guess some of these guys, I'm like, could you be the Brock Purdy of this year? And I feel like O'Connell could potentially be the Brock Purdy of this year. He makes reads relatively well. I think he could succeed in that perfect situation if he's drafted to be a third stringer for the Dolphins, or to, if the 49ers want a 4th quarterback going in there. That's kind of the best scenario, but I don't have too high hopes for Aidan O'Connell.
Yeah, I like Aidan as a backup. This is one of my backup picks. I had him at 9, similar kind of thing. He is definitely not an athlete. I've seen 4.96 40s online for 40-yard dash time. That's not great.
No.
That won't play very well. But yeah, I mean, I could see him kind of just being that consummate professional that that Chase Daniel, who just bounces around the league a long time and just kind of is there and ready to step in and play and make some throws. I don't think he's a bad option for that sort of role, but I don't think the upside's here obviously for a starter. Played in a really nice offense. I think he did some good things. I think he, like you said, I think he learned to read the game pretty well at Purdue, but I just don't think there's a lot there as far as upside.
Yeah, I don't really have him as a backup at this point. I have him as a third stringer. And again, who knows with this stuff, right? Maybe if I talked to him and was in the room and turns out he's the smartest guy ever, okay, well then, I feel better about him. But what I've seen right now, it really feels like if you're a team that wants 3 quarterbacks and wants one of them on a 6th round rookie quarterback wage, then you go with Aidan O'Connell.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of his ceiling, right? Like, it'd be a weird scenario where I see Aidan O'Connell starting, right? That's just kind of how I feel about him.
Yeah, I agree. Do you want to just blow through 10 and 9?
Yeah, we can keep going.
Yeah, because I don't know how much we have to talk about those two. Jake Haener is my number 9 out of Fresno State. Again, kind of a similar feel with him and with O'Connell. I feel like he's someone who, one thing, he protects the football a lot better, I would say. I think he could be sort of this game manager type. Definitely worry about his arm strength. I mean, he uses like his entire body to throw the football. He's like completely stepping into it just to get the ball 20 yards down the field sometimes. So and he's 24. Again, do I think he's going to work out in the NFL? No, but is there a potential? Sure. Again, in the perfect situation, very similar to O'Connell, for him to be the next Brock Purdy. One of my things in my notes of Brock Purdy last year was I said he didn't have an NFL arm. So maybe he is the Brock Purdy, but I wouldn't bet on it. Did we lose Kyle? Oh, are you there? Okay.
I'm back.
Okay. All right. Weird. Good.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah, Jake Haener. I like Jake Haener a lot. I have him at 7. And honestly, if there's one person in this, draft process I may be rooting for, it's Jake Haener. Because he just comes off as the kind of guy people want to play with. A little background, Fresno State, obviously, but he's played through some pretty brutal injuries during his time at Fresno State. I believe at one time he had broken ribs that he was playing through. His coach after his junior year took the job at Washington. He had a chance to go to Washington, transfer there, compete for that starting job, and play for a really good team, a 10-win team. He decided, I don't want to do that. He stayed at Fresno State, balled out again. So I just think that he's the kind of guy you want in your locker room. I do just think that those intangible things kind of matter to me. As far as like looking for a backup quarterback potentially. The arm strength, like you said, isn't there. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy. But I just like these guys. I just value someone who's going to be well-liked, and I think he's going to be well-liked.
Okay. So again, so where would you so for my evaluation is I don't really have him as a I guess late day 3 pick fine. I don't put like 7th or 6th round grades on guys. At that point, it's like, whatever. Sure, use those picks however you want. They're not that valuable. But where would you draft Jake Haener?
I have him fifth round.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth round, and if anyone remembers our podcast last year, I am particularly strict with my my round grading system when it comes to quarterbacks. I don't have a lot of day one or day two quarterbacks, and he would be at the top of my day three board. I have 6 that I could see going in the first 2 days. He would be at the top of my day three board, and just someone I'd probably value as a potential future backup.
Yeah. All right. Well, fair enough. Unless you have more you wanted to add to Haener, want to move on to number 8?
Yeah, let's keep it rolling.
All right. Number 8, I am going with Tanner McKee. Tanner McKee out of Tennessee, or excuse me, out of Stanford. Tanner McKee, it's weird, right? Because he's someone who I feel like there's some football coach that's been coaching for like 60 years who's like, this is the guy. This, prototypical, guy who can just sort of, he's accurate down the field. These, big, tall, all, there's like the kind of like, he's a type, right? And I feel like if he maybe was playing 30 years ago, perhaps he's someone who gets drafted a lot higher. Maybe he's a first round talent. I don't know, given what they value back then. But I don't know. I think there's issues with him. I do think that he, I think that he doesn't have the biggest arm in the world. He will make some weird decisions at times, and I just don't know if I love his athleticism. So he's someone who I would draft at this point. I think he's worth taking a flyer on with a day 3 pick, but that's where I have him.
Yeah, and honestly, I have him as my number 8 quarterback. I have him just after Haener, and I see a team drafting him in like the 3rd or 4th round.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, just because they see 6'6" quarterback and they start to go crazy, right? That's probably what's going to end up happening. I'll defend him a little bit here. The couple things, like Stanford is in a really bad situation football wise. They're in a they're in a Power 5 conference, but they can't recruit like Power 5 teams because they have strict academic standards. They can't take transfers in like everybody else because they have strict academic standards. And somehow they only recruit quarterbacks. This is the only thing they actually recruit well. McKee was a big-time recruit. Davis Mills was a big-time recruit. He was also from there. And they get good quarterbacks. They don't get much good anything else. And I think that kind of plays a part in why like his numbers look so bad. But at the same time, like there just didn't seem to be a lot of development in McKee's game, and that's kind of where I have him here. It just didn't seem like he ever really got better. It still feels like he can be kind of wild with the ball sometimes. But I mean, he's big, he's strong, and I think he has some pretty good zip on the ball, it seems like, when he throws it in the pocket. Those are the things that people are going to value, and probably why he's going to go higher than what I have.
Yeah, I had some throwing motion issues with McKee, which maybe is a good thing for a developmental guy that you're not drafting in the first round to have some throwing issues, because then potentially that's something you could fix. Ways he could get better. He is just 22 compared to some of these other quarterbacks that we're going to talk about that are older. Out of the guys I have at the bottom of my list, he's one of the few young players I have here. It seems like for whatever reason, a lot of older players there. So having someone who maybe you could feel like could get better, because I do feel like you said, there are times when the zip looks good on the ball, and then there's times when like it just feels like there's a ton of air under it. So I wonder if, again, not a throwing motion guru here. I feel like I know bad throwing motion when I see it, but I can't tell you, the exact details. But potentially someone who is a guru could see some things that maybe they could fix there. It's another thing I have in my notes.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. And like I said, it's if you're looking for tools, if you're looking for tools in days 2 and 3, he's probably the guy of this draft that's going to be the late round pick that has all the tools. It's never actually really been seen on the football field, unlike some of these other guys. There's guys who I think are going to be late in this draft, like Jake Haener, like there's a couple other guys here that have had a lot of success and, done really well. I know it's only at the collegiate level, but I do think, at quarterback especially, I do think performance matters a little bit, and he just hasn't had the performance.
Yeah. But again, we always make fun of the John Elway school of drafting, of just looking at who's tallest on the depth chart and drafting that guy. But like, hey, being 6'6" still helps, right? Like there's ways that he could get better at certain things. There's no way Jake Haener is going to grow to 6'6", right? Like you have, at least that is something.
Yeah. That is, yeah, I mean, I agree. That's something that's going to go in his favor. And that's probably, like I said, that's probably why he's going to end up in the third or fourth round, even though I don't see it. But we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah. Let's move on. Number 7. We're still with again, I think the top 5 are really where things get interesting, but there's still some stuff to talk about here at the bottom 5. Number 7, Kyle, before I reveal it, I have a question. What year is it?
It is 2023. Wow.
Right. So does that mean that teams should want quarterbacks who can play well in the year 2023?
I would say so, yes.
That is why I have Dorian Thompson-Robinson as my number 7 on this list. Listen, is there issues on his tape? Absolutely. And I'm not a crazy DTR guy. I still have him as a third round pick, but there's things, his athleticism is enough for me to say, you know what? Could he have Tyler Huntley upside? Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, and I'll do you one better. I have him 6.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack with DTR in my mind because he is, I think what went underrated when they did, that graphic that got posted everywhere, Anthony Richardson's athletic metrics and what he graded out as compared to other quarterbacks. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was right there. He was almost grading out as well as Anthony Richardson. And he's had success. He's had some success at the collegiate level too. The big thing when it comes to Dorian Thompson-Robinson is he's a little older. He's been in college a very long time. And he's definitely had his struggles in college too. He definitely struggled his first couple of years. If you watch his first couple of years tape, you're probably not thinking this is an NFL quarterback. If you watch the last couple of years, you think there might be something there. So there was a lot of development. It depends on how much you value that development, even though you're, compared to his age and, how much he's played. But I do think, there might be something there that's worth taking a chance on. I do see him as I see him as a really low floor, and I see him as a really high, not really high, potentially high ceiling. I do think this is a guy who, if everything works out, if he continues to develop, could be a starter. But I also think he could be in the XFL in 2 years. So I think it really kind of depends on the development system he's on and how he continues to work.
Yeah, that's the issue with him. You're right. I mean, we're definitely drafting a guy who, if you're drafting him, who I think there's a better chance of him being out of the league before his rookie contract is up than him finishing his rookie contract. Like just that alone. But I do think that, again, if we're talking day 3 pick, which that's where, as of right now, that's where he's projected. Like pick 193. If you're getting him in round 5, for example, to me, that feels like better than the average round 5 pick at that point, just because of the upside potential of him being a quality backup. What are his starter odds? I think very low. But I do think that he's probably the one person I would put in this bottom 5 that I would say has a greater than 0% chance of being a starter. Or I should say like greater than 0.5% chance of being a starter.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm, just looking at his last year, 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 70% completion percentage. 70% completion percentage, not to mention 645 yards on the ground, 12 touchdowns. I mean, he has the production. He has the skill set to be able to succeed at the next level. It just took him a really long time to get there to perform at a college level. And how long is it going to take him to be able to perform like that at an NFL level? I don't know how many teams are going to be willing to bank on that.
Yeah, we have Kran in the chat saying, could be wrong. I just don't see him making that jump to the NFL level. It'll take too long, and I doubt he'd get the time to learn. I think you're probably right? That's the difficulty with these late round picks is that they don't get the time to learn. So, like, if I had to bet, I would probably agree with you that, again, I'm not betting on DTR succeeding, but I think there's a chance.
Yeah. And it's just like, I guess, if you go back down the list here, like I could see Aidan O'Connell lasting in the league longer than Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I were to put a percentage chance on it, I would say it's a higher percentage chance that Aidan O'Connell is in the league longer than Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But like you said, if I'm going to say who's going to be a starter in the NFL, I'd probably put a higher percentage chance on Dorian if you're willing to bet on that.
Yeah. So where would you draft him?
I currently have him 4th round.
Okay. 4th. That's not nothing.
Yeah, I'd be okay if a team took him in the 4th round.
Okay. So yeah. All right. A little bit higher on him than maybe most. I guess we're both a little bit higher on him than most people are. Here's someone who I think I'm going to be higher on than most people are because we talked about, not a huge college fan, right? Don't really pay attention to the storylines. Someone who was kind of a meme about, oh yeah, he's a first round talent. He's going to be a quarterback in the NFL. He's going to get drafted in general was a joke a year ago. But I actually like what Stetson Bennett did last year. I have to say, listen, the guy's 25 years old. He's 5'11". He's 190 pounds. Okay, he's still in this. Not someone I think has a great chance of being a starter. I don't really think he has much of any chance to be a starter in the NFL. But if we're looking at who's the next Brock Purdy, who can be a backup, I don't know. I kind of like what he did last year and thought he showed some NFL stuff. I thought that he did a good job of getting rid of the ball quickly. He did master that offense in Georgia. Again, he's an adult at this point, so he should be looking better, but he did. I think he can move well. I think he plays fearless in the pocket, and I think that he does do some little things that can allow Georgia to win. Yes, there was a lot of stuff that allowed Georgia to win, and he was just a piece of the puzzle. But he was a piece of the puzzle. He is, to me, the ultimate high floor, low ceiling type of prospect. I feel pretty confident that just who he is, like, I don't think he's going to improve that much as a player, but I think this player could, in a perfect situation, be the Brock Purdy of this draft and be a solid backup. Kyle, your thoughts?
Okay, this one's a little spicy for me. Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those things where if you're willing to bet on the intangibles of a guy, this is a guy who's won back-to-back national championships. He's been in big games. There's not going to be a single situation that rattles Stetson Bennett at the next level. He's seen every situation that's going to be difficult. He's played the best defenses. He's succeeded. I was impressed with some of the throws he made down the stretch of that season, especially, that TCU game, they put on a passing clinic. Not that TCU was covering all too well, but he made the throws. He made the throws at the end of the day and made some really nice passes to win in that game. It was a blowout. My worry is that he played on a team where everybody on his team was better than everybody else by a lot. And, is he a product of that, or is he a product of also developing enough as a quarterback to be able to hang with these guys?
And I don't know. And I think that I think that the reality is the fact that he did, win so much. I don't know. I'm willing to, when we're talking again, day 3 quarterbacks, which is still where I have him. Am I willing to give you a little bit of a boost for that? Sure, I am. And if there's 2 quarterbacks I like just as much, but one of them has won back-to-back national championships, okay, maybe I'll take the guy who's won back-to-back national championships. I don't think that's crazy to just put it as a plus in their plus column. Not saying that's why I'm drafting him. I do think that people are not paying enough attention to Bennett's last year. I think that he did take a significant jump from 2021 to 2022. And I think that that's something that maybe is getting underlooked. Is people have kind of already made their minds up about Bennett. I do think that he improved, and that is something that I give credit for. Also, Kyle, you're still there. Your video's frozen. Do we still have Kyle? Okay, well, potentially no Kyle. Not sure what's going on with the internet situation, but yeah, I kind of already finished my thoughts about Bennett as well. Unfortunately, it always happens right then, right? It never happens when you're just starting to give your thoughts out. Oh, Kyle, you're back.
I'm back. I don't know what's going on with my computer today, but I'm here. So I'm sorry. I got like half of the Stetson Bennett take there. So what were you saying?
I was mostly just finishing up this thing. Kyle bailed after that take, Jackson. Yeah, Kyle is stunned. Everyone thinks that you just left after that.
Listen, I don't have Stetson Bennett in my top 10, but at the same time, like if you're betting, like I said, if you're betting on a guy who's won 2 national championships, I can't really say I blame you. I think that matters a little more than we're trying to say. I think NFL people are probably going to like that a lot more than we think about it. I know the situation he was in. I know the size, the metrics, but I do think that's going to matter a little bit. And I think NFL teams are going to look at that and say, hey, I'm willing to give it a chance. I don't know if he's going to be drafted because of it, but I do think he's going to get some invites because of that opportunity.
Yeah, he is currently 201st on the consensus big board, so that would mean that he's that'd be around a 6th round pick, and maybe I'll give him a 5th round pick. I don't know. My thought basically is, give my final thoughts on this. The DTR versus Stetson Bennett thing is, yes, I think DTR has a better chance, has higher upside. But I feel like, what would I rather have? A guy who has a 1% chance of being a starter, or a guy who I think maybe has a 15% chance of being a good backup, maybe even higher than that for Bennett, maybe like a 25% chance of being a quality backup. to me, there's more value in the guy who I feel pretty solid could be a nice backup in that spot. So that's my logic.
Yeah. And it's not like Dorian Thompson-Robinson's this young prospect either. He is
Mhm.
23. It's not nothing. These COVID additional eligibility years have thrown some of these quarterback ages just out of the loop for me, by the way. I do have to say that.
Uh,
It's kind of annoying. Like these guys are grown ass men and we're talking about them like they're kids sometimes because it's draft talk. It's very weird.
yeah, it's odd. But we are now moving on to number 5 on my list. This is where things get interesting. I think there's 5. To me, there's a clear drop off after number 5. I think that even regardless of how you feel about those top 5, which most people, I should say, most people have it as a top 4, right? Most people talk about it with the Richardson, Will Levis, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud being kind of the 4 that are mostly talked about. But I have one guy a little bit higher, or maybe I should say I have one guy a little bit lower than other people do, might be the more accurate way to say it. Will Levis comes in here at number 5. Someone who, I posted a video on this channel saying, like, I kind of just don't get it. I kind of just don't get what people love about him so much. There's things, right? There's things I like about Will Levis. For one thing, has to be mentioned, he was in a rough situation last year at Kentucky. There's no denying that hurt what it looked like. But I still feel like, if you pay attention to this stuff, you can evaluate even if they're in a bad situation. Again, there's things that he does well. I think when he's in a good situation, he does perform well. I think that he can throw when getting hit. He throws a good check down. There's things that I like. But the big arm thing is one issue where everyone talks about the big arm. He has a big arm. That's exciting. The big arm. I thought he put a lot of air under his throws on tape. Yes, he could throw the ball a long way, but it would allow defensive backs to come back and make plays, which concerned me. And I don't even love his throwing motion. I think he has real accuracy issues that are, a concern. I don't love how he throws off balance either. So the one last thing I have on my notes, he overestimated his athleticism and it got him in trouble in college, which is a concern. Because if you're getting yourself in trouble in college by overestimating your athleticism, it's really going to affect you at the NFL level. I just don't get Will Levis, and if I'm wrong about him, I'm wrong about him, but I don't get it.
Yeah, I have him at 5 too. Kind of similar situation. I mean, look, so you mentioned it. I'll give a little bit of a breakdown. His superstar running back Chris Rodriguez suspended a lot to start the season last year. He then was battling through an injury most of the year. He had a turf toe thing. He basically lost his entire offensive line from the year before. And he also lost his offensive coordinator to the Rams. So he was dealing with all that and trying to play quarterback, which is incredibly difficult, I would say, for a college player. It didn't look too good last year, but this is still going to be one of the best guys in shorts that you're ever going to see, right? That's kind of that's the appeal. That's the point to Will Levis. I mean, here's the thing though, like it wasn't that much better his junior year where I think his tape is better. And if you look at even just the numbers last year, where he was dealing with that bad offensive line, he was dealing with the injury, he was dealing with not having his running back start the year. He was 2,400 yards, 65% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. The year before, where everyone says that's the good tape, he was 66% completion percentage, 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Like it wasn't that much better as a quarterback his junior year to his senior year. And yet that's supposed to be the tape that everyone says this is what top 5 pick looks like. I just don't see it in that light, and I don't have him to that high of standards.
I think he was better in 2021. I think that the box score stats might be a bit misleading. Like, for example, his PFF grades last year was 68.6, but in 2021 was over 90. So, I do think that the tape was better in 2021 from what I watched. But I do agree that I don't know if it was that much better that I'm willing to say, now he's a top 10 pick. I didn't think it was like that much better, but I thought it was a little better.
Yeah. And I also just think like if that was good enough tape to warrant drafting, like why didn't he go to the draft last year where it was a notoriously bad quarterback class and he probably would have been the first quarterback off the board? I don't know. It all just kind of just screams weird to me. I've never really been in love with this game like some people have been, and I just don't see it. And you know what? I'm willing to be proven wrong. He could go in and his arm's awesome and everything's perfectly fine. He turns out good in the NFL, but I just don't see it at this level.
Well, let me give the counter argument to a player that I don't like either. Just to get both sides of the argument here. What about okay? There's issues with Will Levis, but there's issues with every quarterback. You don't have a
Mhm.
perfect quarterback here in this draft class. There's just not, like you said, there's no Trevor Lawrence here. I think that there's some throwing motion issues that I talked about. There's also some footwork issues that I talked about. Is there a way he can fix those things, get the accuracy down to where he can become a better player?
Well, that's what everyone's banking on, right?
Hmm.
This draft classes. I mean, there's two guys here that are in the same conversation. We're gonna get the other one, but this is the everyone wants to recreate Josh Allen. Basically, it's what's happening.
Hmm.
And this is one of the two bets in this draft class where you're trying to recreate the Josh Allen situation where you get all of the traits of a superstar quarterback and then you develop all the intangibles to make him that superstar quarterback. I mean, it worked with Josh Allen, but how many times can you bet on that working? And obviously, Josh Allen's, I think his footwork and I think everything about him got a lot better. And that's how he, upped his accuracy like a crazy amount by the time he got to the NFL. That sort of stuff worked for him. But there also was just an intangible, there's an intangible sort of gamer attitude to Allen where he's just able to rise to the occasion and kind of take over. That's not something that just kind of is in every player, every great athlete. Not every great athlete isn't wired to do that same thing.
Yeah, I would say Allen was also a lot more mobile than Levis is.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. But okay. Going back to the pro Will Levis camp. He was hurt midway through 2022. Got turf toe. Maybe that was part of why he didn't look as good.
Maybe. I mean, that's what they're going to be trying to sell.
Hmm.
But I don't I've never really seen him as that level of an athlete throughout his career. I think he's been fine. I mean, he had 9 rushing touchdowns his junior year, but he's never been a guy that I'm betting on, rolling out of the pocket and making a play and buying time for his team. I just don't see that in his game, in his repertoire enough.
Yeah, I think the counter argument would be that like, well, the offensive line he played it, for he never got those opportunities. Maybe if he had a better offensive line, he would get more opportunities. Maybe, but I wouldn't like you. I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it. He was at Penn State too, and like you could ask any Penn State fan, they've been begging for an upgrade over Sean Clifford. And he was there competing with Sean Clifford and didn't win the job, transferred to Kentucky. I don't know. There's just a lot of things I don't see with Will Levis at this level.
So where do you have him on your board, and what round would you draft him at?
I mean, look, I do still have him as a third round pick. I have him number 5 on my board, and it's just kind of it feels like I have him on the board to not look stupid because he's on the board for everybody else, sort of thing. And if everything works out that we talked about, if those intangibles translate, if they're able to fix some of his throwing motion stuff, mechanic stuff, then all of a sudden he's a star. That's kind of why he's on the list. I just don't see him as that level of a player, though.
Yeah, I have him as an early second rounder, but kind of the one thing I always say is I'm pretty much always going to defend a team for drafting a quarterback. Like,
Yeah.
again, we're talking about all this. Okay, we don't think Will Levis is going to work out. Even if it's a 5% chance that he ends up working out and becomes the next Josh Allen, like that's still probably worth a second round pick.
Yeah, I would say so.
Hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he's going to go the
So,
first round. So, you know,
right.
someone's going to take the chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 5 on both of our list, interestingly enough. So that means that we each have 4 players ahead of him. If you're a math fan, that's how that works. One of the guys who I'm wondering if this is who you also have ahead of him, Hendon Hooker, I have coming in at number 4 on the list. Hendon Hooker was a guy who there was a second when I was like, this is going to be my guy. I'm going to be pounding the table for Hendon Hooker. Because remember, I don't know what goes on. I just watched the tape. I think his tape is really good. Now, again, Tennessee, you could argue, kind of hard to evaluate the tape. It is an offense that you can you can succeed in. But I think that he did nice things, even just watching the tape and understanding what you can put that into context, and I think his tape was still very good. He can throw the ball a long way, not with a ton of accuracy, but he can throw the ball a long way. I think that, every time I was watching him, like, he looks like an NFL quarterback. Like, the throws he's making, the reads he's making, he feels like an NFL quarterback to me. I think his tape is third best in this draft class, personally. Here's where things get concerning. The guy's 25 years old. and he's coming off of an ACL injury. So how
Mhm.
much of it was he was beating up on weaker competition, and he's not even going to play. So he's not going to play until he's 27, and he's not going to be a high first round pick. So will he even, start at any point? That's where things are concerning for Hooker. But I like the tape enough that I'd be willing to give him. I would draft him in the late first round.
Yeah. I do have him at 4 here. I have him as fringe first, probably early second, but at the same time, like, so it's an interesting journey, right? He spends 3 years at Virginia Tech, 2 years playing where he doesn't really do a whole lot, transfers to Tennessee, and then everything takes off for him. And you're right with this Tennessee offense. I mean, it's the same stuff that like Art Briles ran at Baylor, the same stuff that RG3, it schemes open easy throw and catches. Very much so. That's the whole point of the offense. And not to mention, he's got, two NFL wide receivers in Jalen Hyatt and Brew McCoy on his team too. So, he had plenty of at his disposal to have success this past season, but the tape is the tape. And, there was a time where he was the best quarterback in this, in the country this year. And I think it wasn't a fluke either. I think he makes some really good throws. I think he can move really well. I think he can buy time in the pocket. I think he could scramble and buy time. And I think he's really accurate with the football. So, except for, like you said, deep downfield, it's not always on target. But I think short, intermediate throws are pretty much on the money almost every time in the last couple of years. There was a huge amount of development, it seems like, between his Virginia Tech days and what we saw for the guy at Tennessee. And I'm willing to bet on that working out. I know the age, I know the concerns, I know the injury. I'm willing to bet on it.
Yeah. One stat that jumps out at you is tied for ninth highest average depth of target, threw the ball a long way consistently, but was tied for the second lowest turnover-worthy play rate. Maybe that's just a system of the offense, but it's still something that definitely makes you feel good about him. The fact that he is throwing the ball down the field, but not putting the ball in harm's way.
Yeah. 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 I definitely think it's something that's worth taking a look at. And like I said, I just think the amount of development we saw out of him to where he was the last couple of years, where, if you take his last 2 years numbers, he's at 59 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. I mean, that's just absurd stuff what he was doing. And he didn't even play the whole last season because of that injury. So just an absurd last couple of years where we saw this development. But he is 25. And how much do you bet on a 25-year-old who was kind of in an easy offense developing to be an NFL player?
Right. Are you getting Brandon Whedon here? Are you getting someone who's, just beating up on players who are younger than him? He is part of why he can, protect the footballs because he's seen so much college offense at this point that it's just easier for him. And listen, I know ACL injuries aren't as concerning as they used to be, but this is a guy who's still part of what I like about him is his athleticism. The fact that he's coming off of a torn ACL, that does dock him a little bit as well.
Yeah. I mean, Is he going to be ready to start by next season? So you could potentially draft this guy to not have him next year, right?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, the reason you draft Hendon Hooker, the ideal situation, I think, is one of these teams that's drafting high, let's say the Panthers draft him in round 3. The Kirk Cousins to the RG3 thing of when you get a quarterback that you like, you also draft him, and then if your quarterback that you drafted doesn't work out, well, now you have a backup plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it'd be worth on some teams who have quarterbacks taking a chance. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting because I mean, the conversation last year with Kenny Pickett was Kenny Pickett's old. He's seen a lot of football. Kenny Pickett was 23. This is a whole different level of old. This is a whole different level. So it's a risk, but the tape is impressive and the throws are impressive. There's no doubt about it that at his best, he was up there in the conversation with a couple of these other guys.
Yeah, well, I think, again, this is what Hendon Hooker is going to argue, is he's going to say, yeah, there's a risk in drafting me with my injury and my age. Find a quarterback that there isn't a risk, right? We all have risk. At least with Hooker, you can say his tape is much better than Will Levis's. His tape is better, I would say much better than Anthony Richardson. He's going to say, I'm the better quarterback right now. Yes, there's risk, but there is upside. I also do have to say, though, I don't know if he has the upside as some of the other players in this draft either, which is why he's a little bit lower.
Yeah. Would it shock you if he's not any better than he was the last couple of years? This is his full development.
No, yeah, that's totally possible, but I still think that's a quality backup.
And potentially okay-ish starter, right? He's not going to be
maybe like a Tyrod Taylor type situation.
Yeah. So I think he could be a good quarterback in this league.
Yeah. So that was number 4 on this list. 3 left. Three guys who I'm very fascinated by. Number 3 on this list is someone who, we could probably do a whole podcast talking about this guy, Anthony Richardson, out of Florida. Physical specimen. I mean, the guy's 6'4", 231, only 21 years old too, so plenty of time to develop. He is someone who there's no denying that his athleticism just wows you. I mean, it's like the Justin Fields thing. We saw, the combine, people are going crazy over what he was able to do. The athleticism, how fast he can run. He does have a big arm. One slight concern I have with Anthony Richardson, Kyle, he can't play quarterback.
Yeah, completing passes is an issue for him, right?
Yeah. Other than that, big fan.
Yeah. So it's tough. Like, I think I've said this before. I'll repeat it on the podcast. I've watched Anthony Richardson for a long time. I was covering that area when he was in high school. He's from the Gainesville area. He was a guy I was really excited for in high school. I thought he was going to be a really good college quarterback. I thought he had serious NFL potential at the time. And I was waiting for him to get his chance. And then he got his chance. And he was like a part-time player. Basically, his first couple of years, he would just do these, like, they'd put him in for random plays and they end up being like 60-yard touchdowns. And you're just like, why doesn't this guy play more? And then he gets the chance to start towards the end of last season, heading into this season. And that first game against Utah, he gets that upset over Utah, who's a top 10 team preseason ranked. He looks great. Everything looks good. We're all singing Anthony Richardson's praises. We're all saying, okay, we're ready for this guy to take this leap. He's a friend, dark horse Heisman contender in that game. And in that game we were talking about, I'll just read off the numbers. He was 17 to 24, 168 yards passing, but he also had 3 rushing touchdowns and 106 rushing yards, which is the athleticism we're talking about. But we're saying this is all of a sudden the guy. Going to Kentucky the next week, following that up, he has 2 interceptions, completes 40% of his passes. And look, I've listened to other people talk about Anthony Richardson. I've watched Anthony Richardson. I don't think he knows how to read the game. I just don't. And, until he proves that, he's not going to succeed in the NFL as a quarterback. And that's the problem. Because I think it was very clear when you watched him play at Florida, if his first read wasn't there, if his first read didn't have a throwing window to make, he wasn't going to make a good throw or make a good decision because he didn't know how to make the next read. But when he was able to set his feet in the pocket, make a good throw, I mean, it's electric. He has an incredible arm. He has incredible arm talent, and he's an incredible athlete. So it all kind of goes together. So what you're betting on is that you can teach him the rest of football so that he's able to play quarterback at a high level because the baseline for him is incredibly high. The baseline of what he can be is incredibly high. And if you develop the rest of that part of learning to play football, basically learning to play quarterback, the ceiling is incredibly high.
Yeah, and I'll say this: you brought up the reading plays. I thought he got significantly better as the season went on. I thought that towards the end of the year, he was actually at the point where he was only like bad at it. You know what I mean? Where it's like he was at the point where he was like at times I thought showing that he could do it. He's shown me he can do it. Like I've seen that on tape. He hasn't done it consistently. My biggest issue with Richardson isn't that. I think that that's something that he's a young player. His reads are going to be easy. With his athleticism, it's the Lamar Jackson thing when he was a rookie. His reads are going to be easy. For me, the accuracy thing is a much bigger issue. There were no one had more, who are you even throwing that to balls that I've ever seen? Richardson would miss guys by a mile at times. That's far more concerning for me. And that's the thing that if he can't fix, he's not going to work in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, the Florida State game, I thought at the end of the year was basically a perfect microcosm of what Anthony Richardson is. He completed like a third of his passes in that game. He completed like 9 passes in total. Yeah, it was 9 of 27 passing here. He had 3 touchdowns though on his 9 completions. And it's just like, okay, when he makes the good read and makes a good throw, amazing thing happens. It just doesn't happen enough to like, if he could do it consistently, he'd be undoubtedly the number 1 pick. It'd be a lock, right? Yeah. But the problem is it's not consistent enough, and that's something he's going to have to work on. But that being said, the talent is so tantalizing. You're willing to give him the chance to work on it on your team, right?
Yeah, and and I think it's so, someone says like, how does one fix that though? Doesn't sound like watching film helps if it hasn't until now. Well, I think it's gotten better. That's kind of part of why I'm okay with drafting him higher up. I do think that aspect of his game has improved, and he basically played 1 year, like you said, and that's kind of why I'm more willing to give him a chance. And again, it goes back to there's always a risk factor with quarterbacks, which is why I think that's the easier thing to fix. To me, the more difficult thing to fix is the accuracy. That's why I give that a bigger concern.
Yeah. I guess to put in comparison, like once again, he is the other guy who's could be the Josh Allen of this draft. He needs the right
Mhm.
system in place to kind of get this to work out. Josh Allen took off when he got Brian Daboll and when he got Stephon Diggs. He's
Yeah.
going to have a situation that's beneficial to him where he has a play caller who's willing to work with this skill set to maximize it. And then also players that are going to have to help him out along the way. He's going to need to have high level receivers earlier in his career because he's just not going to succeed when he doesn't have the talent around him right now. You know, he is very much, taking that development track to the NFL. And there's going to be, there's certain guys, I think CJ Stroud got a lot of his development done in college. Anthony Richardson is going to get all that development. It's just going to happen in the NFL, and he's going to need a team to be patient with him and have the talent around him to help him succeed.
Right. Yeah. And one thing we haven't, I don't think, talked enough about, his running is really good. Like he's someone who, like, his running is
Yeah.
going to, we kind of talk about that extends your basically your opportunities to succeed. That gives you a longer time. That gives you more NFL experience, essentially. Like we saw with Jalen Hurts, right? Hurts' running ability kind of kept him afloat for his first couple years in the NFL, and then he was able to fix the other things. Lamar Jackson's another one where if you can run well, then the idea is basically he uses his legs. I mean, Justin Fields is probably the perfect example of that. Who, all he does right now is run the ball. But the Bears just traded away the first overall pick so they can build around him because they, like that running ability so much and hope that he can develop as a passer. What's the ideal situation for Richardson? I have a couple that I think would be great situations for him. What's the perfect situation that if that happens, you're like, okay, he could really hit them?
Las Vegas.
Interesting. Why them?
I like the offensive coordinator. I like I like Josh McDaniels as an offensive play caller. I like
Mhm.
Devontae Adams as a pass catcher. And I just think having those guys, Josh Jacobs, I think that would help him a lot in his development track.
I'd be concerned that Josh McDaniels wouldn't do a lot of quarterback runs though. Like to me, the perfect example. So, like to me, I was thinking like the Falcons, one pick later would be great because like Arthur Smith is, part of what he did with Ryan Tannehill was he used him in the running game.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be another really good one. I like that too. I don't know. I think like Vegas, I think McDaniels would be okay using a running quarterback, honestly. I do.
Mhm.
He it wasn't a perfect situation, and I think a lot of that had to do with just Cam's debilitating injury, but he wasn't afraid to run the ball with Cam Newton during that time. And when Cam was healthy to start the year, that worked really well. They still had that Seattle game and all that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
I think he'd be okay with having a quarterback who can run and have design run plays with them. So I think that's still where I just have the situation, just because I also really value a guy like Adams for a young quarterback, you
Mhm.
know, and like I still believe in Drake London's talent. I think he's going to be a star in this league. I don't know if he's ready to really. He still has his own development to do. Never mind
Sure.
helping a quarterback develop. Like a guy like Devontae Adams would help him right away.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I think the Lions, if he goes there and kind of sits behind Goff for a year, that could be helpful. I think what I would be very concerned with if he goes to a team like the Colts, and then the Colts say, we're going to make him a pocket passer. We trust his ability. We don't need him to throw. We want him to play quarterback. You want a sort of a new school mentality with Anthony Richardson and say, hey, we're going to have to try new things to make this work. You don't want a Matt Nagy with Justin Fields situation.
Yeah. I also don't, a team like the Texans who just don't have NFL talent around them. I don't love that either. I don't think
Hmm.
that's the best situation for them. So, I think there are a lot of interesting teams potentially at the top of the draft that could be in the market for a guy like Richardson. But yeah, I would still say right now that Vegas is the team I'm circling as that would be my ideal situation. Um, Atlanta's a good one, like you said. I think Detroit would be a good one. Even, Seattle hasn't said no to the idea of bringing in a quarterback.
Hmm.
That could be an interesting one too, if they're actually serious about the potential of it.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, yeah, it's interesting, and I kind of think it's more about the mentality when you draft him than just the situation. But you're right, obviously having good receivers is going to help. All right, I think that's it. I think let's go to the top two. Now, this is the video, right? This is
Yeah.
the podcast. Who do we have at number one and number two? I'm still not convinced about my own pick here, Kyle. I think it's close between these two. I don't have a strong opinion, but what I think about is you asked me a couple, maybe a month ago or so about I think it was a couple months ago, so sort of towards the end of the season. Zach Wilson had clearly not worked out, and you said, "Do I have any regrets about the Zach Wilson pick?" And I said, "I think no. Those are the prospects that I value. Not all of them are going to hit. It's hard to predict quarterbacks." The reason why I valued Wilson higher than Lawrence to begin with was because I thought that his upside was stronger. I think I'm going to pick the guy who I believe has the more athletic upside as my number one pick. So I'm going to pick Bryce Young at number two, who, if was selected first overall, I would not be too mad at it because I think he's totally worth a first overall pick.
Yeah, I love Bryce. I loved him in college. If you ask anybody who they watched over the last year, who their favorite player, Bryce Young's going to be in the top of that list. I have him number two as well. And I've gone back and forth on this for basically a year. And finally, I just said, I think I decided on Monday who my quarterback was going to be. And I just said, I'm not going to look at it anymore. I'm just going to wait until Wednesday show to talk it out. I have Bryce Young number two. Bryce Young is incredibly gifted as far as a processor, reader of the football game, and has a fantastic arm for someone you wouldn't look at and say he's got a fantastic arm. His arm is legitimately good for being one of the smallest quarterbacks of all time. And he makes really good throws. And, some of the concerns I think are legitimate, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But, I do think because of his size, there is a chance that, you're getting a steal at number two because he is that talented.
Yeah, yeah, I could see it work out. There's so many things he does so well. Like you said, the high IQ stuff. It's almost like, there is a bit of that, like the Tua Mac Jones thing, which obviously that comparison is going to come in because, all played for Alabama. He's much better, I think, off script than either of those guys. I think that, the way he sort of will, move in the pocket, but then still throw and find ways to set guys, throw to guys open. I think that he'll he understands, like, it's not just who do you throw to, but how do you throw it to them. Like, he'll throw back shoulders and things like that. Well, he's the most pro ready guy in this draft class. I think that's goes without saying. I think that, day one, I do think that he has a higher floor, certainly, than CJ Stroud. I would say here are some of my concerns, and they're not massive. Like I said, love Bryce Young. Think that he should be drafted second overall, and if he falls past second overall, I think that would be insane. And if this was last year's draft class, it'd be no question he'd be going first overall. I do think that there are some times when he holds onto the ball for too long. I think he will try to fit the ball, kind of similar to Trevor Lawrence, will try to fit the ball through tight windows that maybe he shouldn't. And he can get away with it now in college, probably won't get away with it in the NFL level. I think he takes some hits that he just shouldn't take. Like, I think he does have to protect himself better for a small player. Like, that's something you have to, like, you don't want to be the small player who also takes some hard hits. Some of these hits I see him take, I'm like, man, you gotta figure out a way to avoid that. It's not worth staying in the pocket for a 3-yard out to take a collision like that. And then he missed some throws under pressure as well. So kind of my main thought about him, I think that he could be like Joe Burrow. I think that's it. I haven't heard that comparison too much. I've heard that comparison more with who we have at number one, who I assume you have at number one. But to me, this one feels a lot more accurate, of the kind of smaller player, but still has a big enough arm, maybe not elite, but still a good arm. I would say very good arm. But good at avoiding pressure and all that stuff. To me, the biggest concern is just how quickly will he get there with kind of, understanding how the NFL game works as opposed to how the college game works.
Yeah. A couple other things with Bryce too. Like, So I guess, getting to the size thing, we'll talk about this for a second. So the size,
Mhm.
like, at this point, it's like, I think it's a gross overreaction to say, like, he's not like a top 5 pick because of his size. But I
Mhm.
also think it's concerning enough that you should have questions about it, especially if you take him first.
Mhm.
Because if you're taking him first, you're basically saying you have no concerns at all. And I basically don't love to deal in like, high variance situations, basically, if I were an NFL team. That would be my strategy. And
Mhm.
not only is he a small quarterback, he's basically the smallest quarterback ever to go in the first round.
Yeah.
Like, that would be concerning to me. It would. And I know he graded out just over 200 pounds at the combine. I'm not
That's
buying it.
weight is fake. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
chug a gallon of water beforehand, and now you're
Yeah.
up. Yeah, that's doesn't exist.
Yeah. I'm not buying that. So
Mhm.
he's probably fringe 6 foot, sub 200. So I think it's a little bit of a concern. A couple of the things you said, there, he takes some massive hits. You're right, and like you said, for a smaller guy, like usually smaller guys are really good at avoiding those hits, and that's how they last so long. But he
Mhm.
is not. And the thing is that he is the most poised quarterback I think I have ever seen, and that's even including a guy like Burrow, who was Joe Cool. Right? He is one of the
Mhm.
most poised, composed quarterbacks I've ever seen at standing in making throws. He's just unafraid to take those hits, but he did take some big hits because of it. And I think, you could take it as a positive and you could also take it as a negative too, because he is going to take those hits. And a couple other things too, like usually Alabama, you say, okay, well, he's with a bunch of superstar players. This was not a very good offense. His receivers weren't very good. His offensive line wasn't as good as Alabama typically is. Like his running back is a stud. His running back this past year was a stud. He's going to go in the first 2 rounds. But outside of that, like there wasn't a lot of star talent on this team, and he was really kind of carrying these guys to an elite level. I just think that kind of stuff matters to me a little bit.
Yeah. No, I mean it matters to me. I mean, it matters. I think that at the end of the day, though. So, are you with me that like you think it would be insane to not draft him number 2 overall?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I I can't do Anthony Richardson over Bryce Young if it's a
Mhm.
quarter. We're all assuming the Texans go quarterback at 2. I think it'd be insane not to at this point. Um, I just I like Anthony Richardson as a potential future, but I just can't, based on his tape, which is not the same. I just can't justify him over Bryce at all.
Yeah, and there's totally a chance that we look back at this and say, "Why didn't we just put Bryce Young at number 1?" He's
Mhm.
great. If and I guess I said that if the Panthers selected Bryce Young first overall, I'd say, yeah, sure, fine, I get it. Is that how you would feel as well, or would you say that no, Stroud is the right pick?
No, absolutely. I think this is close. I think it's really
Hmm.
close between these two. Um, I think you could totally justify going Bryce Young as 1, and I'd be okay with it. And I'd be excited to see Bryce Young in Carolina. You know, I'd be okay with either of these guys going first overall, no doubt.
But let's go to the guy that we both, again, I'm assuming, unless you have some scorching hot take, we both have first overall, CJ Stroud out of Ohio State. One thing I meant to mention about Bryce Young, he's only 21, so is CJ Stroud. That matters. Playing young, that's something that does matter. Stroud is someone who, like I said, I just think the upside is off the charts. I think what Stroud has that Young doesn't have is the athleticism. I think that he can move so well. I think that that's something that he does not get enough credit for. Running. It's weird. Again, I have issues about him as well. I think that his footwork can be a little bit lazy at times. Almost reminds me of Drew Lock at times when he's getting pressured up the middle, kind of throwing off his back foot can be a bit of an issue, and that results in some missed throws. I also think that he had a million years in the pocket in Ohio State. He's going to have a
Mhm.
learning curve for sure. Year one. A lot of the tape that we saw in Ohio State was just him doing sort of simple stuff that doesn't tell us that much, and doesn't have to go to his next 3-2 option. We've seen that with other Ohio State quarterbacks. But I think that his throwing sort of off balance, like when it's not just throwing running backwards, but throwing sort of side to side, really good stuff. I think it's very accurate down to field. I think he's an amazing runner. I don't think that gets talked about enough. Is how well he can use his legs. I think guys oftentimes took poor angles to tackle him due to underestimating his speed. I think he has good awareness of what's happening down the field. I think that he has great field vision, which is something that he didn't have to use too often, but he could use when he had to. I'm a big CJ Stroud fan. That's why I have him first overall in my quarterback rankings.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. The ability to play off script was something I didn't think Stroud had in this game a long time. And that was my biggest concern. And that's why for a while I had Bryce Young one, is because I think the ability to play off script might be the biggest advantage an NFL team has nowadays on the offensive side of the ball. Just because of how much time some of these quarterbacks can buy in making throws. I didn't think he had it so long in his game. I hate to use individual games to change my opinions on things, but man, when I watched that Georgia game, I really did not think he had a performance like that in his bag. And, he took a team that is going to have 3 NFL defensive linemen, maybe 4. It has NFL players in the secondary, and he made them look foolish. He made them look bad. He played off script. He made some great throws, and he kind of dominated them in that game. And it was an incredible performance for him. And it's something that really changed my perspective of him, because for a long time, my comparison for Stroud for a long time was Ryan Tannehill, where I think he's a good but not great athlete. I think he makes really good throws in the pocket, but I think he's kind of an on-script guy. And then when I watched that, it changed a lot of my perspective of what his ceiling could be. It raised his ceiling for me. And it was just a really impressive performance that I thought changed a lot of my tune on Stroud.
Yeah. I think part of it too was, he didn't run the ball a ton. Like the thing about Stroud is I think he's a really good runner when he tries to. He just didn't do it that much. And I think in the Georgia game, that was kind of one of the examples of him using his legs a lot more. And I think that to me, I kind of wonder, is it he can't do off script stuff, or is it he chooses not to? And I think that if he does choose to do more off script stuff, I could see him really thriving at the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think he could too. It's something he's going to have to add to his game more, because I do want to do the Ohio State quarterback thing, I guess, real quick, because I think one of the things, this Ohio State quarterback narrative, I think is a little overblown. Because look, I think at the end of the day, Cardale Jones was not like a first round NFL talent. Nobody viewed him as a first round NFL talent. If you look at a guy like Dwayne Haskins, was a first round pick in a year that we viewed the quarterbacks as a weak quarterback draft. We just viewed it as a bad quarterback draft that year. That was the only reason I felt like he was a first round pick. Justin Fields was the only guy who was really drafted in the first round because he was viewed as a first round talent. And then we have Stroud. So I do think there's a couple things with Ohio State. One, everybody they play, they're way more talented than. It's not like an SEC thing where Alabama's playing Georgia's and LSU's and all that kind of stuff, who also are riddled with NFL talent. Michigan has some NFL talent. Every other team has maybe 1 or 2 guys in the Big Ten that's NFL talent, right? And it's just not the same level of teams in defenses that he's facing. So he's got a better offensive line than everybody's defensive line, and he's got these receivers that are just open all the time. If you look at his receiving core last year, he had the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, Chris Olave, who was pretty darn good in his rookie year, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's going to be a first-round pick this year. And then if you look at, what he had this year, Jackson Smith-Njigba gets hurt. He has Marvin Harrison Jr., son to one of the best receivers of the modern era, who also is probably going to be a first-round pick here sooner rather than later. So, he's played with a lot of talent. But at the same time, like you said, so he's going to have to add this stuff to his game because he's never had to use it before at Ohio State. He just never had to. And I do think it's there, though, because we just saw it in that last game where he finally had to add the off-script stuff, had to add the extend play stuff, and he did it. He did it at a really high level against a really good team.
Yeah. I think that the argument for Stroud, of course, is, well, yes, that's totally fair. Absolutely fair to bring up. But the one game that we're all talking about was against NFL talent. I mean, it was against, an incredible college defense, and he was incredible in it. And that game, I mean, I think we agree. Again, you can only take so much from one game, but at the same time, a lot of what we're looking at with quarterbacks, I think, with this position is it's not as much of how often do you do it. It is a bit more of, can you do it? Can you do this stuff? Have I seen it from you? And I care more about that at this position because it is such a hard position to evaluate. The fact that he was able to do that is, that was the most impressive game that any quarterback on this list has had, in college, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. And if
Mm-hmm.
if his team kicks a field goal, they're playing in the national championship and winning that game.
Yeah.
You could look at too, like Hendon Hooker had a big game against Alabama. There's a couple other ones, but that is the game from start to finish was probably the most impressive.
Yeah. So CJ Stroud, number one on both of our list. I can't remember if I asked you, where did you say you would draft Anthony Richardson?
First round. I have him in the first round.
But where in
Uh,
the first round? Is he a
I'd
top
pro-
10 pick? Is
yeah,
he
I have
sort
him
of
top 10. I think
uh,
he's. I'm willing
mhm.
to say he can go top 10.
Yeah. I think I would draft him if I'm the Colts. I think if I would draft him at 4. I think that the risk is worth the reward for me, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's gonna have someone's gonna take the chance on him, and
Hmm.
there's enough talent there to bet on it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's the top 2 guys, and then there's a little bit of a gap to Anthony Richardson as a top 10 guy.
Yeah. I'm a little worried that the Buccaneers are going to give up a future first round pick to trade up for Will Levis. I feel like
I think
that's on the
everyone's
table.
kind of so. I think everyone who's quarterback needy in this draft is kind of circling the wagons, a little concerned about the idea of Will Levis on their team.
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, again, and it feels like the team that's going to get him could get for the Buccaneers giving up. I feel like it would be. I feel like I could totally see them doing that. Oh my God, tall guy with a big arm. Oh, this is great.
He's. I see the Colts taking him, honestly.
Yeah, you think so?
I don't know. That just feels like a very Colts pick.
I could see Frank Reich kind of favoring the guy. Yeah, you're right. It's such a Colts pick. It is that makes too much. It almost makes too much sense for it to happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought maybe Carolina would be interested, like you said, the Frank Reich thing. If they were still at 9, I
Mm-hmm.
don't see how they could trade up from 1
Right.
to
Yeah.
take Will Levis. That would be crazy.
I think so, but again, we thought. Remember doing the Trayvon Walker stuff last year? You never know.
Yeah, I guess so. I would be legit. I would be more surprised about that than Trayvon Walker. I really would.
Yeah, I think so, but I was stunned about the Trayvon Walker. I remember when someone mocked him number 2 overall. I was like, get out of here! Like, what are we doing here?
Like I get, but the thing is like he's not even the best at. Like Trayvon Walker was the best athlete last year.
Right. I could see why someone would
Yeah.
do that.
Will Levis is not the best athlete at quarterback this year. That's the thing. He's not the best thrower.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, I just don't see anybody doing that.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
we'll see. That is our top 10 list. Was there anyone that didn't make? I'm assuming there's someone who made. I believe there's one person, right, who made
Yeah.
your list that didn't make mine.
I had Clayton Tune at 10.
Okay. Mhm.
Big college stats, okay-ish arm. Another intangibles guy, it seems like to me. I liked what he did last year, and he looked really good at the Senior Bowl. So I'll buy in some. He's worth a 7th round pick in my book.
Gotcha. Here, why don't you give your list a run through? Just because we mentioned it as I gave my list, but just for people curious, give your list a run through.
Yeah, so for first round picks, I have CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. For late first, early second, I have Hendon Hooker. For late second, early third, I have Will Levis. For fourth round pick, I have Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Fifth round, I have Jake Haener, Tanner McKee. Sixth and seventh round, I have Aidan O'Connell and Clayton Tune. That's my top 10.
Gotcha. Let's ask one more question from the chat before we go. Would Anthony Richardson at number 1 surprise you? Would that surprise? You could make some Anthony Richardson, Cam Newton comparisons. Like, I don't think that's what you would do, but I wouldn't do it. But I think there's a world out there where they do select Richardson at number 1.
Yeah, I see him a lot. I see it as a more realistic thing than Will Levis. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I could see that situation. I mean, look, people fall in love with physical tools all the time. Like, this is not just a pure NFL thing. It happens in the NBA. It happens in MLB when it comes to prospects too. And it's going to happen with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, that's something. Cam Newton, behave, Jackson. No, I'm just saying you could talk yourself into it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's not out of line. I think just based on physical gifts, Cam Newton was obviously a way better thrower
Right.
and you know way better tape throughout his career
Hmm.
in college, especially. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
But Cam Newton
the
was a
physical
consensus #1 overall pick.
right, yeah, the physical gifts for Anthony Richardson are in the same conversation as some of the best athletes you've ever seen. He's in that
Hmm.
conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw the grades. It grades out that way. He was the combine darling for a reason. Everybody knew instantly he would start at the combine.
Yeah. So it should be interesting. We will have plenty more draft talk on the way. Like I said, next week we will be doing our ranking every defensive position. We're going to do top 10 defensive linemen, top 10 secondary players, and then top 5 linebackers. The following week, we're going to the offensive side of the ball, given our prediction, our rankings for every single offensive position. And then finally, we will do our mock draft the day before the draft on Wednesday. Should be a lot of fun. And every Wednesday at 5, that's when we podcast. Kyle, let them know where you can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin. And make sure to follow the account page that's at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Yes, of course. If you like audio only podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, just search On the Sideline Podcast. We should be available. So if you want to listen to us, don't want to have to look at us, that's the way you do that.
Yeah. I've been told a lot of people don't want to look at us. It's okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Some people have said that in the comments, I think. Most of you guys are cool. Every now and then you get someone who's mean.
That's basically our number one consensus review. Good guys, no football, kind of ugly. It's okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think a voice for faces for podcasting, Kyle.
Yeah, we can't win at everything. It's as simple
No.
as that.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take what we got.
Yeah, I mean, we got some good stuff going on.
Yes,
What have you been up
okay.
to, man? How's it going?
Things are good. Things are good. I'm enjoying the. I'm reading a book. I actually finished a book. I'm reading another book now. I'm becoming a reader, Kyle.
2 books? Wow, reader. Hardly know her. Anyway, what are you reading?
I'm reading the new Stephen King book, the fairy tale.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King's he's fantastic.
I've never read a Stephen King book before. Amazingly, I just it's never always it never happened. But it's good.
Yeah, everything, when I have read Stephen King books, I've tend to enjoy them. I don't really have any other comment beyond that, but I haven't read that one, so we'll see.
Yeah, sorry. Was the book conversation not one that was not great podcasting material?
No, it's fine. You can talk about whatever you want. I asked you how you were doing, what you've been up to.
That's pretty much it. I don't do a lot.
Yeah, to watch a baseball. Your team's undefeated.
I know we've been amazing. This has been great. I don't know what's we're going to go 162-0.
Yeah, you book your World Series tickets?
Yeah, already booked them. Yeah, we're good.
All right, good stuff.
And hockey's coming up, Kyle. Sports are hockey playoffs are coming up. NBA playoffs coming up. The sports are back.
Sports are buzzing. We got some good stuff going on. Bruins going to go President's Trophy. They're 2 wins away from most points NHL season. I think 3 wins maybe. Anyway, but they're gonna go ahead and lock that up. Then we're gonna go President's Trophy to Stanley Cup champions. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, usually the team that wins the President's Trophy does win the Stanley Cup, so you can feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I don't love our path, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to play the freaking Islanders and their stupid brand of hockey.
Yeah,
I don't
that would
want
concern me.
I don't want to play those guys first round. Their stupid goalie is stupid good. Their stupid defense is stupid good. And I don't want to play that. I'd rather just play Pittsburgh and beat the hell out of them for 4 games and then move
Or
on.
Florida now.
Yeah, I'd beat the crap out of them too. I think I prefer either of those over the Islanders. So I want to avoid that. And then I want to I don't want to play Tampa. It's as simple as that. I don't want the idea of playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't want to play Vasilevsky. That's what I want to avoid. Avoid the Islanders and avoid Vasilevsky. Then I think we can make the finals.
Yeah, especially I think you guys, you're rooting for hard. You're gonna be rooting hard for Toronto, aren't you?
Yeah, I want all the Toronto smoke. I don't care how good they are this season. I want that smoke. I'm not even afraid of Carolina. Those, the Islanders and the Vasilevsky are the only 2 things I'm afraid of.
Yeah, no, I've still been saying for a while. I think whatever team gets out of our division, that's the team that's going to win it all, Kyle. But the chance if you lose to Toronto, though, that would be devastating. Like if we lose to Toronto, whatever, we don't have really beef with Toronto. But Boston losing to Toronto, I mean, you'll never hear the end of it.
Especially after all those years of beating the crap out of them. Then they
Mhm.
turn it around on us in our best season ever.
Right. I mean, that would just be you break the wins record, and then that. I mean, you'd have to quit watching hockey.
I don't know. I was talking to my dad about this because we are very superstitious people as Boston sports fans.
Hmm.
I don't know. This feels like it's a 2007 Patriots gut punch incoming, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Especially in hockey. That's just, I mean, again, the Lightning literally did this 4 years ago. I mean, this has literally happened like in very recent memory that they tied the wins record and then got swept out of the first round.
Yeah, it's like we'll either lose to one of these teams with a great goalie, or we'll get to the final and play someone who stinks like Colorado. Colorado's actually turned it around a little bit, but they stunk for so
Mhm.
much of the year, gets hot at the right time, and then beats us in the Stanley Cup or something like that. That's what will happen. But I don't know. It's a nervous excitement, I think is the right wording for that.
Hey, it's fun. Yeah, I avoid the Islanders. Plus, Islanders are just like a dirty team. They're just like always like I don't get. It doesn't matter who they. I hate the Islanders. The Islanders. I don't even hate Boston as much as I hate the Islanders. I think that they every series somehow miraculously the star player of the other team gets injured.
Yeah. They have a very particular brand of hockey that I mean, it wins for them in the postseason. It's so stupid that you can have like just this certain style that only wins in the playoffs. That's your
Hmm.
sport, but it works for them because they win in the playoffs. They succeed because they have this certain brand.
Yeah, yeah, no, they're the worst. Are we in agreement there? The Islanders the worst.
Yeah, I think so.
Hmm. Look at us, Tampa Bay and Boston hockey fans coming together.
For now, until we have to play each other.
Uh-huh. How weird is it though? The team that has never beaten my team is the team I hate the most, the Islanders. We've only just consistent. We're 4-0 against series against Boston. We have like an actual rivalry. We beat each other all the time.
Yeah.
But no, Islanders are the worst.
Yeah. You guys have adopted a little bit of a physical brand of hockey now that
Oh
you've
yeah.
lost some of your depth. That's kind of your thing now.
We got this guy Jano. I've never seen it. Like, he could like be in the MMA. He's that good at fighting. I don't know why we traded 5 picks for him because that seems to be mostly what he does. But still, he's this incredible. I've never seen an enforcer like him. He's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate NHL playoffs. I mean, it's the best and the worst at the same time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna need like heart medication to get through this.
Oh yeah.
Legitimately.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Who knows? This year will probably be the Penguins will randomly win or something like that.
I'm not betting on that. They're not a very
Okay.
good team.
No, the Penguins are not very good. Yeah, I don't know. Florida's hot all of a sudden. They got called soft by to Chuck's dad, and now all of a sudden they're winning.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see. I'm not sure I'm betting on that one either.
No, probably not. But hey, I'm not betting on any team to win a Stanley Cup. Right? It's so hard to win.
Yeah, I mean, it really
someone will win.
is.
I'm just saying I'm not betting on any one specific team to win.
I mean, we legitimately have a team who has a plus 120 goal differential, which is what almost 70 higher than the next best team. And we can't even say consensusly that this is by far by far the best team we've ever seen, probably in our lifetimes. And we can't even say this team's going to the cup final for certain.
Yeah, we're not even like I could see them getting to the conference final. They have a shot.
Yeah.
Like that's where we're at.
Yeah, they're probably the favorites, but we don't know. That's just how hockey works. It's so
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah, no. Should be fun. Yeah. Again, thank you to everybody for listening. To everything that we talk about here at the end of the show. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. To talk defensive players. Thank you for everybody. We do appreciate it. Kyle, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we just about covered everything. Let's get out of here.
All right, let's get out of here again. Thank you. We do appreciate it. And until next time, have a good one.
Peace.